Hello, my internet friends. Welcome to Walking and Talking, the show where I walk and talk. My first thought is how grateful I am that you're here, listening and or watching. But then the immediately following thought is that on a certain other level, there's a sense in which I don't care if you are listening or watching. Well, it's not exactly that I don't care. I do care, but there's a certain kind of ambivalence of whether you're watching or not, which points to, I guess, what my greater desire is. Generally, I guess I could call your well-being. I want you to feel a deep sense of peace. And so, to the extent that this YouTube video can contribute to that, then I'm glad that you're watching or listening. But to the extent that this video might be a distraction from other activities that might contribute more to your well-being, then I feel some hesitancy or even a remorse or something like that. But it's roughly even here, and I'm hoping that in the content of what I say, that the benefit can be maximized. That is, maybe I can minimize the extent to which this video can act as a negative sort of distraction. I want to return to that thought, but also I want to jump to another train of thought, which is, even though I say that my desire is for your well-being, there's perhaps even another level, which I even feel somewhat ambivalent about that. And this level is one in which even the concept of well-being is seen as one half of an actual dichotomy, or an apparent dichotomy, the other half being pain and suffering and unwell-being. I don't know if that's a proper word. Just call it, the general unsatisfactoriness of experience. And I start to notice, in my life how sometimes it can kind of seem as if these two poles, if we can call them that, suffering and unsatisfactoriness on one hand and peace and well-being on the other hand, I'm not entirely certain, but sometimes it seems as if they create each other. That they need each other somehow. Just for example, in my life, let's say the preceding few days, couple of weeks or so, I've been getting into some intensely depressed states at times. But it almost seems as if the more intense these states are and the more terrible they feel, the more they motivate me to change my life, change my habits and such, and put effort into structuring my life in a way that will avoid these feelings and lead to greater well-being. And it's like I've been relatively successful in that, or in the past few days. That is, I'm seeing myself have the motivation to do the sorts of things that make me feel more peaceful and well more of the time. And of course, the things that I'm trying to do, I hope are the sorts of things that would really be a sustainable way of maintaining a relative sense of well-being. To not have to experience periods of depression, but at the same time, from this perspective, I can recognize a certain function of these depressed states as being something that, like I said, really motivates me to muster the willpower to address the root causes of them. seems as if a depressed state is almost, it's like a deep encounter with emptiness, you know, the truth of emptiness, that when you're in it, it doesn't feel like you have any control over. It feels like you have no choice but to experience a profound emptiness in everything that you maybe previously thought to have substance and meaning. And so for me, it seems like the path forward involves not trying to distract yourself from any kind of, you know, not like disavow everything of your perspective that you might experience in a depressed state. Like there may be some truth to your perspective from a depressed state. And even, you know, we don't have to just limit this to, you know, like major depressive episode or anything, but also just like periods of feeling sad, or just feeling dark in general. Like, I'd have to say that one of the most obvious things about states like that is that they are temporary and they pass. You know, and like my present experience is total proof of that, because I would not say that currently I feel depressed or sad. But at the same time, I want to acknowledge that in that state, the way that you see the world feels absolutely true. And it feels the experience can be as if the emptiness that you are seeing. Whoa, check out that bike. Nice ride. Oh, I can't believe they left this unlocked. Somebody's gonna steal it. I'm tempted to steal his bike. Man, nice one. Nice lock on it. If only there was a key. Can't believe somebody just left a perfectly good bike there. Anyways, what was I saying? Oh yeah, that, you know, the experience can be like the emptiness that you see can seem as if it's more true than your what you previously thought about the world, like your normal life. it can feel as if, you know, your normal day-to-day life, or even, you know, periods of feeling just fine or feeling happy, were just illusions, like as if you were just kind of like operating in some fantasy land, and that the tolerability of life is actually an illusion, and that the profound meaninglessness and emptiness of everything is actually the greater truth. And that, you know, you can have this experience where it seems as if that meaninglessness and emptiness is the ultimate truth, and like that there's just no reason to continue on. Like, how could you continue on living normally in the face of that truth? Like nothing is like really worth doing. But in this moment, we can see that, at least as far as I can tell from this perspective, that isn't an ultimate unchangeable truth. Just because, you know, here I am, I'm walking and talking, you're listening, and I'm having the experience that this is worth doing. And I'm in a state where I can also think of many other things that seem worth doing. Now I do feel that there is something very true about this emptiness, that sometimes in a sad or depressed state we are forced to see, like right up front. But it's not the totality of truth. It's not the totality of reality. It's kind of a bifurcation. It's seeing one very true side of truth, but it's not a totality. And I think there's evidence of that, for me at least, even in a depressed state, because there usually seems to be at least the very faintest notion of another truth. Like, it could be in the form of just a very faint memory or something that comes to me, and a memory of an experience where I felt the opposite, where I felt a great fullness and love. But it's hard to, it's like you can't fully like access that state, but you can at least have a kind of intellectual memory of it. And that memory can inform a certain, to retain a certain skepticism, a skepticism that the emptiness that you see is not the grand totality of reality. But furthermore, I have this increasing sense that the dark and painful experience of emptiness is very much linked with having the opposite experience of feeling joyfully full of love. Or feeling, sort of the joyful profusion of substance in life. In my memory, I can perceive a pattern of, of my experience of reality to either move between those poles or to sometimes rest a little bit more evenly somewhere in the middle. And it's as if the fluctuation between those poles can happen, rapidly in the course of, mere minutes or hours, or they could happen over the course of days or weeks, or there might even be, fluctuations on the scale of years. And then even within, like a broad wave that might last years, and there could be also on that wave smaller, shorter fluctuations. In our memories, we can kind of piece together an idea of our emotional topography, the term I'm so fond of. You could maybe you remember like a year of your life that was really difficult, but then even but within that year of difficulty, maybe there were like little short wonderful experiences. Or you might remember a year of your life where it felt like you were on top of the world. And then, but maybe within that there were, certain days where you struggled a lot, or maybe you can remember a time when you were just kind of like not particularly up or down. But also, in our memory, our understanding of these experiences can become very different than our understanding that we had while we were experiencing them. Maybe there's a period that where you just felt horrible, that in retrospect you can see as a period of very deep growth and development, something that contributed a lot of significance to who you are now. And in retrospect, that experience takes on an entirely different tone and meaning. So this is the sort of thing that maybe is going through my mind when I say something like, on one hand, I care about your well-being, but on the other hand, there's a sort of ambivalence. And so I could clarify that further by saying, like, while on one hand, I don't want you to be suffering or feel bad, on the other hand, I feel that it's possible that suffering or bad feeling could later, you might understand it later to have played an important function in your life. To be, maybe the difficult experiences are actually connected to experiences that are meaningful and positive. That kind of seems true to me. So it's as if I'm saying that yes, I want you to be well. I sincerely want you to be well. In the deepest way possible. To have a really deep sense of peace and well-being. And it's not that I wish for you to be suffering at all, or to experience sadness or depression or a painful apprehension of emptiness. but I would hesitate to I would hesitate to say the sorts of things that are that would, you know, that would kind of discount that experience as being totally false or something, or to give you any sort of advice that would tell you to, you know, like totally avoid that feeling, or to like to just kind of like bury it underneath some relatively superficial like positive thinking or something. But at the same time, like, I recognize that it's possible that what I'm saying now could be kind of comforting or reassuring, and I feel fine with that. Like, I say these sorts of things with a great suspicion that I'm not the only one who has such experiences. And that the possibility of communicating these sorts of experiences could lead to connection. For some reason, it seems desirable to me to, in whatever sense, we have control over our emotional topographies, which that's, you know, whether we have free will or not is this whole other topic. But to the extent that it feels like we have control over our emotional topography, you know, and it very much does, of course, you know, correlate with our experience, that we can do things to regulate our emotions. To that extent, it seems to me desirable to gravitate towards the structures that, you know, do just that, regulate the emotions and lead towards a slightly more middled out topography. Where you're not having these extreme highs and extreme lows. because both seem like sort of a fragmented or partial or unstable view of reality. You know, to be able to kind of float in this middle where you can grasp the interplay of emptiness and form, you know, of meaning and meaninglessness. Which is, you know, if it's more level, in some way you could see that as perhaps more sustainable or continuous or consistent. I don't know. It's not that I can't really say that I can place a value judgment on a flat versus a steep topography. Because who knows, you know, maybe the high highs are worth the feeling of the low lows. I think I've heard an account of, you know, someone who had talked to some people diagnosed with bipolar disorder, who would testify that the manic highs of bipolar were totally worth the depressive lows. That they felt like it was worth it, even having even having the kind of self-awareness to recognize that they were bipolar, and to have the wherewithal to recognize that they have these extreme highs and lows, and at the same time say that it's worth it, that it's okay, you know. That's really interesting to me. I mean, if you talked to that person when they were in the downside, the depressive side of things, I bet they wouldn't say the same thing. I could almost guarantee that they would say, like, you know, I don't want this. But then, you know, if you talk to them when they were like in the manic stage, you would hear the exact opposite thing. Let me go take a whiz for a moment. Whenever I go to take a whiz, I really have to be aware of how wide the frame is with this fisheye lens. Also, while we're breaking here, just a little announcement that in this episode I've been thinking that the visual is not very important, that actually just the audio is the chiefly important part of this. And I mean, to the extent that I consider, like, why not make this thing be audio only? Something that I've thought about because of what I was saying earlier about the possibility of this video being a distraction from things that might contribute more to your well-being. It seems like if it were only audio, there would be less of a risk of that, because with just audio, like my experience of just listening to the audio of someone talk is that I stay engaged a little more in my physical surroundings, in the room or wherever it is that I happen to be. I feel a little more integrated into things, and the audio of someone talking, especially if it's, you know, a person who's saying something coherent and meaningful with a focused mind, the combination of that audio to talk and then just, you know, the rest of my sense experience being more oriented towards my immediate physical surroundings often feels like a really good combination, as opposed to what sometimes happens if I'm watching a YouTube video where my attention gets sucked into the video in a way that feels like it leads me to kind of ignore some of the other sensory experiences, and maybe my body might start to hold some tension in it without me noticing. Or maybe I'm starting to slump or something in my chair. You know, maybe I'm sitting in a chair and watching a video and kind of a little below my conscious awareness, I might be starting to to have some more constrictive emotions start to build up in my body. Excuse me. So this is why I say that it might be totally, it might even be preferable for you to, I don't know, not necessarily watch this video, but just to listen to the audio. I mean, it's totally up to you. It's you're probably the best person to judge what way of experiencing this media is most conducive to you having a helpful experience, an experience, one that would contribute towards open feelings as opposed to constricted feelings, sense of openness and peace and contentment rather than rather than any kind of anxiety or grasping kind of feeling. And I think you can notice this most easily in sort of the physical sensations of your body. Like just notice, is there any tension in your body right now? What's your posture like? Is it upright, or is it slumped, or is it hunched? Are your shoulders hunched up, or are they like more down? Are you having any kind of like nervous sort of like fidgeting? And if so, could any of these, could your feeling of well-being be improved if, while listening to this audio, you do something to sort of engage in your body and your surroundings? Like, what if you like laid on the floor and kind of stretched out and just felt like what it was like to do that, or doing a headstand is really great. It's a really great thing to do, just to sort of like change up your flow of emotional experience, of like embodied experience. Just do a headstand for a little while, and I find that when I do that, I feel like I'm participating in my body in a much more enjoyable way, a fun way. Or like laying on the floor on your back and putting your legs up on a chair or a couch or a bed or something like that is feels pretty good to me sometimes. Or also, what feels pretty good is to just like clean, organize things while I'm listening to somebody talk at me through the computer or whatever device. Pick up my clothes, put them away. If there's any like dirty dishes laying around, just at least just like stack them up or something. Organize things. It feels good. Maybe look around you and see if you have any things that you need to get rid of, or that you might like to get rid of. Objects that you're not really in need of anymore. Maybe you can just put them in a pile of things to give away. I don't know, or you can either sell them or give them away. These are just, possible suggestions for ways to experience this YouTube video. Or, any sort of, manual sort of task that doesn't require too much of your linguistic processing sort of brain, can be a really great complement to this sort of thing. Like, if I have to do some fairly, some task that doesn't require a whole lot of figuring out of how to do things, that's fairly straightforward, and I can do that at the same time. Like preparing food, folding laundry, fixing something, stuff like that. Or something like drawing. I realize I've maybe gone a little bit off the rails of the things I was talking about before. But regarding emotional topographies and ones that seem sustainable versus unsustainable, I mean, ultimately there's no unsustainable in that you will always continue to have an emotional topography no matter what. I suppose in the event of death or something, that gets a little more complicated. Like maybe you stop having an emotional topography then, or the topography dissipates, or one's perception changes so drastically that there exists no more experience of topography. Or maybe if there is something approximating reincarnation or something like that, it could be the case that emotional topography continues. Now, regarding reincarnation, I don't believe in it as such, but I do believe it as I do believe that it has possible metaphorical value in terms of understanding consciousness as something greater than just one's own individual human experience, and as something that goes beyond the span of one's individual life, which is something maybe I could get into later. But again, I've diverged. But also, I feel okay with this divergence, as while I'm sitting here, even it seems as if even just this activity of talking, just kind of following these trains of thought, I'm noticing some change in a somewhat more fundamental quality of my awareness, so to speak, and that I'm starting to become more aware of these trains of thoughts just kind of continuing beyond my control. Now, it's not to say that before I was controlling my thoughts and now something else is controlling my thoughts. That's not what I'm saying. More accurately, it would be to say that that there seems to be a higher level of consciousness coming more into the forefront that is aware of what I commonly identify as the I that controls my thoughts. So it's as if my default mode is to be identified with that which produces the thoughts, or to be, identified as, what is controlling the thoughts or what's producing the thoughts. It's as if now what I'm identified with is something a little bit larger than that is able to see within it this process of thoughts forming and trains of thoughts and witnessing the thought process from a higher perspective. And just, like, it kind of happened as I started to see how one train of thought would kind of lead towards what I'd perceive as another train of thought, and all these possible divergent tracks of thought that none of which is any less true or less important than what I'm thinking of as the original train of thought. They are all connected. And through this process, what's becoming more apparent to me is just this vast open field of possible trains of thought. Like, as if this train of thought could lead to literally any other train of thought. Like, it could go anywhere and still remain connected by virtue of all existing within this open field of possible thought. And as the thoughts continue, it's so interesting for me to see them manifest into whichever particular train of thought they manifest into. Like, just the fact that I'm speaking this particular train of thought, this particular one out of an infinite possibility of what thoughts I could be speaking, seems so interesting to me. Oh, and that train whistle reminds me that there's a sheltered spot just right up the hill that I should probably go to, so my stuff can stop getting so wet. It's like I feel both this wide open field of possibility right now, but at the same time feel a certain calmness or contentedness to just continue on with whatever experience or whatever train of thought I happen to be having at the moment. And this relates back to what I was talking about at the beginning, of that I do perceive the emptiness of things, as in, like, I witness the particular train of thought that I'm having, and when I see it as existing in this huge open field of possible thoughts, it plainly seems almost arbitrary what particular thought I'm having, you know? It's just that this particular thought has manifested as one possibility out of an infinite number of possibilities. And so and at the same time, I'm feeling a disidentification from the I that creates these thoughts, you know. I don't feel strongly identified with as the creator of these thoughts, but I feel actually more identified with a witness of these thoughts happening. And so in that sense, every thought that I'm expressing, every word that I'm saying, I feel aware of its emptiness. You know, it has an emptiness. A lack of any ultimate meaning. When I recognize the fact that it's as if I could be thinking any number of other thoughts that could have branched off from the train of thought that I started off with. You know, it's as if, you know, I just happen to be on one little twig of a whole tree, and it's as if I, you know, am experiencing the twig and the whole tree simultaneously. So it's almost as if like the experience of emptiness could be analogous to, like, what if you are a twig, you know, and you feel identified with being this twig and feel some sense of the importance of your identity as twig, and then one day you suddenly become aware of the existence of a whole tree that's, you know, comprises thousands of twigs, and suddenly your importance of being twig, like, feels empty. And so that, you know, that experience could be painful, but maybe it doesn't have to be. Like, could that experience start to be, could that actually be part of a process of an expansion of what you are identified with to the whole tree? You know, a connection, like the beginning of a connection of what was previously experienced as separate consciousnesses, but then beginning to, you know, connect into one larger, more unified consciousness. and it could be, and this leads me to think. So like, I guess just to connect this back with what I said earlier, or about, you know, I'm saying one particular thing, and the fact that I've noticed that there's an infinite number of possible other things that I could have said that could just have easily resulted from how I began this video. You know, it could have branched off in any number of ways. In some sense, it doesn't, it like, you know, in one sense, that might reduce the significance of whatever one particular thing that I happen to be saying, but at the same time, it makes whatever one particular thought that I have happened to be saying seem all the more important, or all the more significant. It's paradoxical, really. It's like there's the one thought that I'm saying, and there's the infinite possibility of things that I could be saying. And this feels analogous to me to this paradox of, you know, why am I this one particular person? Why am I Ben Bennett out of all the billions of other people on the planet? Or, you know, why am I this human being as opposed to any of the other organisms around, or even inanimate matter? You know, why am I not the road that I'm walking on? But I guess it seems like I need to just kind of like maintain this paradox. It's like the twig on the tree, like recognizing that there's this whole other tree of twigs. It's still no less just that twig. That, you know, has its own place on the tree and its own function as part of the tree. Boy, I'm noticing my battery pack is running a little bit lower than it seemed to be displaying at the outset. There's some possibility that the batteries of this run out during this episode, but I feel okay with that. I think I would publish it anyways. But so relating back to emotional topographies, the way that I feel now feels very even. That is, I don't know. Well, I'm not sure if it's even or if I might, or is it possible that I am on some kind of high? So I guess I would say that, like, my emotional level feels pretty stable. But but then like in this sort of like intellectual realm, or like the certain like how could I put it, the quality of my experience I could say as I feel positive about, I feel good about, I feel like this process of thinking, and more than just thinking, but this process of a changing awareness of my thinking, you know, a changing awareness of the process of thinking. I could describe as being higher than my default mode of being more completely identified as Ben Bennett, the source of my thoughts. Ben Bennett, the individual who thinks things. Like it's a very it's a much more open experience than that. But at the same time, you know, continuing to be aware of this paradox that I don't seem to be able to like permanently escape that mode of experience, that default mode of being identified as this individual self who thinks thoughts and seems to be in control, you know, seems to be responsible for the thoughts. As I'm walking here, well, just now in that sort of brief gap, I suppose as resulting from a habit of meditation, my awareness sort of shifted towards my physical sensations of my body, and I kind of noticed my posture, and noticing my posture led me to want to straighten my back a little bit. And I just noticed, you know, various sensations of the weight of my feet, you know, or the weight on my feet, and the coldness of my hands. And then, you know, I I notice these physical sensations occurring simultaneously with the auditory and visual experiences, and I just kind of noticed all of these things happening simultaneously, and noticed how they are all just sort of like components of an experience that normally comprises an experience of being a distinct individual, of being a person in a body that has delimitations, you know, where my skin meets the air is, you know, the limit of my body. But then, as I noticed that, and as I started to talk about it, that didn't seem like exactly the truth. That what's a little more true to say of this experience is that so what I would normally call sense perceptions, you know, the touch sensation, my visual field, the auditory thing, and then beyond that also just the thoughts. These things, you know, normally all of them being, you know, like I'm not really like aware of them as being perceptions as such. Even they are just kind of like taken for granted, and then there's this me, there's this identity that goes on unquestioned. Me who's here seeing the rest of the world, me who's here hearing, feeling, and thinking. You know, much of the time not even really being aware of the fact, not even being aware of the fact, you know, of seeing, hearing, feeling, and thinking. But all of those things just kind of happening while my awareness, you know, is like kind of like more buried somewhere within thought, you know, being just identified with thought, being identified with emotion. But at other times, like now, not only do I feel aware of these processes of sensory perception as such, you know, as not only am I aware that I am seeing, hearing, feeling, and thinking, but additionally, I can experience these sense perceptions not exactly as sense perceptions, but more being, but them actually comprising reality on a more fundamental level. As in, it's not exactly that these perceptions are what is connecting, me with the world, or the inside versus the outside. It's not that my sense perceptions are bringing the outside world into me, where the me who thinks can then perceive them and think about them. It's a little bit more like let me just walk a little bit and see if I can figure out how to articulate it. It's a little bit more like this like self and other collapse into the perception, collapse into experience. Like realizing that this experience is all that there is. In a sense. And in a sense that there's a sense in which perceiving and thinking are something that is actively separating the self from the rest of the world. Like this thought of it's me who is seeing, it's me who's hearing, it's me who's feeling. is like it simultaneously separates us and joins us with the rest of reality. That is, and even for me to say something like the rest of reality, also in some sense, you know, joins me with it, or acknowledges it, but at the same sense separates me from it in the in making the distinction, to distinguish myself from it. So what's, you know, I mean, if for me, the feeling of integrating more fully with the rest of the world is concurrent with a cessation of suffering, or at least a more clear understanding of suffering that lets me experience in a way that is not exactly suffering. And so this seems like a desirable experience. But is there a difference between, you know, this experience as like being a human and, say, being a rock? You know, a rock, as far as I can conceive, wouldn't have any kind of experience that amounts to anything like a human experience. That a rock wouldn't have identity as such. And doesn't have perceptions, I wouldn't say at all. And so in that sense, a rock is more totally and fully integrated into reality than any being such as a human that has all these mechanisms that work together to maintain an illusion of separateness. And so would we say that would be desirable to be more like a rock, or to be dead? Because to be a dead body is more like, more closer to being a rock. They're gone are the mechanisms that create the illusion of separateness. I don't think that either of those things should actually be thought of as desirable. In the sense, that I don't know, when you can grasp the all this possibility of what you could be identified with, or what you could be, then for me the mere fact that we are humans and having the human experience in a way, becomes all the more significant and precious. Like, why, you know, why am I a human? Why did I end up being a human instead of a rock or a mosquito, you know? It's as if the answer is both arbitrary and meaningless and incredibly remarkable and significant. And even the quality, even the phenomenon of differentiation as an individual human can be seen as just astounding, another just astounding manifestation of reality, you know? The fact, like the experience of being an individual human is when considered in the context of all of reality and all of, you know, all that exists, seems incredibly rare and precious. And within that experience of, you know, being a differentiated individual, the fact that there exists also this capacity to experience integration is equally remarkable. The fact that I can exist as a differentiated human and then also be able to not only like contemplate and intellectually you know, at least attempt to comprehend my place in the rest of reality, but also, you know, have experiences of the dissolution of that distinction, is just, you know, it's incomprehensible. It's incomprehensibly profound. I need to set the camera down for a moment. Let me, you know, I have to whiz again, which is, I guess we can take that as a positive sign that I'm well hydrated. So let me set you down for a moment. my hands have gotten very cold holding the umbrella and the selfie stick. I just need to like put my hands in my armpits for a moment. So, you know, we have what seems to be this paradox of, as I was saying towards the beginning of the video, of like, you know, simultaneously having a sense of being connected to a larger whole, but still it doesn't seem like we can like, it doesn't seem as if we can like permanently escape the sense of being beholden to our bodies, you know, like and even our minds sometimes. Like we can't, you know, just like kind of dissipate our consciousnesses out of our body and, you know, escape death or something. Like this body is going to age and die, and even the mental structures that, you know, comprise this identity of Ben Bennett that can say these particular things is going to eventually deteriorate and go away. And you know, I don't seem to be able to escape simple things of, like, you know, having to pee or getting cold and needing to get warm, needing to eat food and drink water, all that sort of thing. Like this, even this, you know, what I'm have been, you know, talking about as this remarkably profound experience, is still completely dependent and connected to the most ordinary stuff of life. Of, you know, having to work, having to take care of your body, having to meet your emotional needs, all this stuff. All the mundane stuff is all, you know, completely part of the same thing. And even, you know, even my ability to stay connected to the sort of profundity that I seem to have been talking about in the past few minutes has its limitations. There's probably going to continue to be you know, the experience of being a self that looks after the self and has selfish needs and maybe like protects aspect of the self against perceived threats coming from others or coming from the world, that acts in order to maintain the integrity of the individual self. But that's still all part of it. And even on top of that, it's like, it's as if the self, or at least what is experienced as a self, has to do certain things in order to have any connection with what I'm talking about. Like, you know. And that's not to say that, like, there's only one certain specific way of maintaining this connection. Of course not, but this experience, this particular experience of communication right now has been, in a sense, dependent on everything that's been in my life leading up to this point. But then I logically have to extend that dependence to everything that influenced me, you know, any teacher I've had, any talk or thought that has influenced me, even down to childhood experiences, even every single experience and interaction that I've had in my life is connected to this. And then, you know, logically you have to kind of extend that to all of reality and all of the past as far as it goes. You know, I'm having this feeling like I'm having this feeling of like a total merger of any kind of profundity and mundaneness, of them being completely connected to each other. And being totally aware that even the current experience that I'm having of let's call it like a proliferation of thinking, or the experience of my thinking existing in a wide open, infinitely open field, is also connected and dependent towards the total opposite of experience, of feeling, you know, constricted in my thoughts and in my body and all of this, or feeling, you know, feeling total like experiencing the total like banality of everything, like if I actually watch this video back, to me, like it's entirely likely that I could watch this back and see it as just the dumbest thing ever. You know, to witness this representation of myself speak in this sort of affectation of experienced profundity, and just be like, you know, I can imagine a future self like watching the representation of myself and just being like, okay, whatever, like, you know, it's totally banal, like, you know, get over this experience, you know, like the feeling of like you in a normal, everyday, default state, like seeing somebody who's like tripping on acid or mushrooms or something, like their sort of like attempt at communicating their experience of the profound, and you're just like, okay, whatever, man, you're tripping, get over it. Or like that's totally real too. Like I feel also aware of, you know, how totally meaningless all of this is. How fleeting this experience is, how temporary it is, how relative it is. I feel aware of all the failures of communication. I feel no like illusion that I have any sort of like special power to confer upon you, the viewer, some, you know, lasting experience of profundity. Nor do I exactly feel desire for that. Because at the same time, it's like I also feel equally aware that here I am, just a dude walking around with a camera mounted on a wooden stick, talking to it for 4 hours, posting it on YouTube with no editing or production values, and how you know, no illusions that your experience like exactly mirrors my experience. Nice glove. No, you know, no experience. I have no illusion that like me having this particular experience is and filming it and posting it is necessarily going to like perfectly communicate this experience. But also I don't feel the importance of that either. I don't feel actually any particular desire, you know, to like make everybody else have a similar experience. Because like like I said, any supposed significance of this experience is like also leveled out by its total insignificance. And a sort of understanding of all possible experience as being, you know, a sort of equally significant or equally insignificant, however you look at it, experience. Like just, you know, on the same, like not distinct, not ultimately separate from this experience that I'm describing now. It's like I no longer does there seem to be any importance of labeling this experience as significant or insignificant as compared with any other experience, and no longer really does there seem to be any importance of even referring to something as this experience as opposed to other experience. It seems moot and irrelevant. And there doesn't seem to be, for me, an important. There doesn't seem to be an important distinction between what I'm doing as being like generous or totally narcissistic. Like, I could interpret it either way. There doesn't seem to be any reason for me to evaluate the quality of this video, you know, in terms of utility or any other measure of value. By the way, let's just check in again on our physical state. Like, are you remaining aware of your physical sensations? Are you holding any tension in your body? I think a really interesting thing is happening due to the sort of 4-hour requirement of this. And once again, I want to say that my battery pack is seeming to run low, so I'm not sure if it's gonna be able to continue recording the whole 4 hours, but still, an interesting thing is happening and happens due to this long format, which is that I'm not really able to just sort of like stop after having reached some kind of profound insight. I'm not able to just kind of like stop it and leave myself and you clinging to some kind of high, you know? I'm not able to just like stop and allow all of us to just kind of like bask in a revelatory feeling. I mean, assuming anything like that has occurred for you, I don't want to make that as assumption. But because of this format, this long format, I'm sort of compelling myself to continue on in this framework, you know, of continuing to talk and record myself talking. And to post all of it, which sort of, in a sense, well, I think I say in a sense too much, but it requires me to continue reporting from my experience as it shifts through, you know, whatever mode, like, and I mentioned before how all of our modes of experience seem to be dependent on one another, as in any mode of clear insight also seems to be dependent on, you know, the default mode of going about our daily lives and taking care of ourselves in a more self-referential, self-interested mode. To go, you know, to do this thing for 4 hours continuously is interesting in that it's kind of difficult to maintain any kind of like greatly insightful state continuously for 4 hours, and so it kind of forces me to really witness the connection between all these states. To not so strongly differentiate them, to not like valorize and exalt any particular state over another. It kind of pushes me into a more non-dual understanding of all the various ways of experiencing reality that may occur within these 4 hours. Which I hope, you know, has an effect of integration of pushing myself to, you know, I suppose, live more and more of my life in alignment with the clearest insights that I have. And I suppose I would hope that this might encourage you to do the same. Boy, I'm getting a little chilly as I get damper. once again, a reminder that for this video, I don't consider the visual component to be all that important. Not that I consider any of this video to be all that important, but the audio is the more key component for the communication to take place. I mean, so there is, I think, a real reason for the 4-hour time length, and in a sense, I gotta stop saying "in a sense" so much. I say it way too much. I need some synonyms, some alternate phrases. But the 4-hour time length is sort of functions as you could say, a response or a resistance to the format of YouTube, or a resistance to the media world at large, in that it makes it much more difficult for me to offer a clean cut media experience for you. For 4 hours, it's nearly impossible to maintain like a charismatic persona or any particular desired characteristic that a video could have. I mean, I could achieve that supposedly by editing or something, but that's outside of the parameters of this project. I walk and talk and film the whole thing continuously and post the whole thing. And so I guess part of my motivation for doing that is that, for walking and talking at least, is that it's a little harder for me to misrepresent reality in that way. It's harder for me to make a type of media that's addicting, I think. I mean, we can extend the concept of addiction almost to everything. You could say that you're addicted to drinking water in order to survive. But with a 4-hour video, would be very hard for me to maintain the type of media that is, you know, continuously stimulating your dopamine in a way to create addictive sort of behavior. Like, and it would, but so I guess I would think of the behavior of returning to walking and talking over and over again as being something that's like more of a habit than an addiction. A habit that hopefully could be more integrative with a full and healthy life than I would suppose some other forms of internet media to be. Like TikTok. Are any of you on TikTok or have seen this stuff? Like, I only recently had a brief experience with TikTok because there is some teenage girl on TikTok who is sitting and smiling, making sitting and smiling videos, and apparently getting a lot of views, and she's apparently playing into the sort of like conspiracy theory of being kidnapped, which is something that I never did. That is, she's like intentionally making little cues to like add fuel to the fire of people people, you know, projecting this idea that maybe she's kidnapped or something, which is, you know, totally ridiculous if you think about it for even a minute. That she would have, that she could be kidnapped and have only enough freedom to make sitting and smiling videos, but not enough freedom to communicate the fact that she is kidnapped. And, you know, but the part of this that involves me is the fact that in her bio, for some reason, she put my email address of sittingandsmiling@gmail.com, which I used to have listed on this channel, but no longer, because it was just like too much in the inbox. But of course, you know, now, because for whatever reason she decided to put my email address in her bio, I'm getting all these emails from people saying, "Are you okay? Are you kidnapped?" And all these emails are intended for her. You know, and so, like, you know, she's kind of like playing, she's kind of exploiting people's natural concern. And I mean, and also, like, it is kind of, if you think about it for a moment, if like she had the freedom to, if like people are saying like, "Are you kidnapped?" and it's like, if you had the freedom to respond yes, like, why wouldn't you have you know, notified outside help long ago? And so it's like, it seems a little bit illogical to even, you know, entertain this reality for a moment, but I suppose it's indicative of people's willing gullibility, people's kind of desire to buy into the sensational. But I digress. And so, like, I was trying to figure out a way that I could contact her to just ask her to take down my email address so that I could stop getting all these messages in my inbox. And so, and I can't, view TikTok without signing up, so I signed up for an account, and then realized that there's still no way to, like, send her a message on TikTok. But in the process of this, like, I witnessed the TikTok app, and it's horrible. It's just the most attention destroying, brain rotting thing I've ever witnessed. Like, it seems like the medium that would be just perfectly corrosive to any sort of mental or emotional qualities that would be necessary to, like, have any kind of sense of peace or well-being or functionality in this world. I mean, it's just like short, few second long videos that one after another, no break. They just, like, keep coming and coming, and it's like all I saw for the, like, few moments that I watched this was, all these, like, kind of tween age kids, like, just, what can I say, doing the most, like, kind of, like, attention grabbing thing they can for a few seconds, and then instantly, with no pause, it's like on to the next tween doing the most attention grabbing thing that they can do. And it's like, it's like frightening. It is frighteningly absorbing, and gives me, like, a sick feeling at the same time. So I deleted the app from my phone after finding no way to resolve this issue of getting this person to take my email address off of their account. So currently I'm just kind of feeling, trying to be okay with getting all these dumb emails until hopefully hopefully the phenomenon fades. Or I tried to send an email to TikTok, but of course, like, you probably can't really email an actual person at TikTok. But I guess if anybody out there here, like, knows how I could actually get in touch with somebody at TikTok, or if somebody has a way of contacting the sitting and smiling girl on TikTok to just, politely ask her, please take my email address down. I don't care that you're, totally imitating my YouTube channel in a bastardized way. I don't mind that at all. But, the inbox thing is a little annoying. So, here I observe myself having started off this video talking about things like depression and emotional topography and them you know, highs and lows being linked, and that continued in a seemingly coherent fashion for quite a while. And I got into talking about the like simultaneous significance and insignificance of whatever particular train of thought that I happened to be expressing, and that kind of leading to a lot of talk about an experience of non-duality, and then you know, that kind of leading into talking about the connection between the profound and the mundane. And now in the past few minutes, kind of going off telling a story, you know, just about the pragmatic world of past few days, and feeling, you know, equally interested in that story as anything else that's happened in this video. And, you know, also feeling like I am relating to you in some sense a more like mundanely transparent or transparently mundane way than I ever have before. As in, like, having this feeling like I can kind of share any realm of my experience with you without feeling any kind of embarrassment or needing to hide any aspect of my life because it's like too mundane to be of interest to you. You know, while simultaneously while simultaneously not feeling like any kind of like urgent pressure to make what I'm saying be interesting. But talking about uninteresting things, my hands are cold again. I'm just gonna stand kind of next to the camera while I actually put my hands inside my pants and use my butt to warm them up, because that seems a little actually more effective than the armpits. While I'm at it, remarkably, I just have to whiz for the third time. I must be really well hydrated. You know, sometimes I have some very big doubts about walking and talking, questions of whether I should continue with this format or do something different. You know, when I think about what I perceive as problems with this format, particularly if I ever stop to kind of evaluate, if, you know, conceptually kind of evaluate this format in comparison with the rest of the media landscape, it can be really hard, because it does kind of go against most of the measures of value for, you know, successful media, successful entertaining media, or even you know, educational media. So I have these doubts, but as I'm doing this now, as I'm making this video, I have this feeling of it actually fulfilling something that fulfilling a certain role in this media landscape, which seems to me valuable, actually, and that, at least in my experience, this video seems to be succeeding at being both really interesting and really boring at the same time. And then, like, kind of paradoxically, that in itself is interesting to me. Or smashing the difference between interesting and boring. And this does kind of feel like for me, a kind of model about how to go through life. As in, if I expect for everything that I do to be full of nothing but significance and meaning all the time, like, I'm going to be seriously disappointed when I come up with the fact that sometimes I just have to do something that in the moment doesn't feel particularly meaningful or rewarding or bring about some profound sense of connection. But it just, you know, it's just some, you know, total mundane work that you do. And moreover, it's that, like, this meaningfulness is found, you know, in none other than the perfect mundanity. It's like you just do it. You just do something. Without any sort of expectation of it being like a great thing. You know, and I can think back over my life and think about all the things that seem to stand out in the narrative of my life as being particularly meaningful accomplishments. Or the aspects of my life that, you know, things that sort of define my identity. And I can recognize that in actuality it was just a whole lot of just mundane, normal work that just went into those things. Like just a lot of like little unheroic actions. A lot of like just going ahead and doing stuff. And you know, even more mundane than that, even like also what went into all this meaningful stuff is a whole lot of just like what seems like kind of wasted time, kind of like wandering about, not knowing what to do, being unsure, being indecisive, trying all sorts of things that I didn't continue with, abandoning projects, getting excited about one thing and then getting quickly disillusioned with it. I've done all sorts of that stuff, and it's like I can't actually like not acknowledge all of that either. That like in some way all of that like messing about, like you know, failing to complete things, vacillating between things, apparently wasting time, like all of that kind of, in some weird way, like fed also is related and connected and feeds into the sorts of things that I seem to attribute meaning and significance to in my history, in my personal history. I can't tell if my attitude towards this video right now is one of striving and effort, or of non-striving and effortlessness. If I had to choose one, I would say it was a little bit more towards the latter, of not striving to present any particularly emotional, you know, any particular characteristic or persona or emotional tone, but to kind of like more like allowing, but it again feels like somewhere in between those things, or both or neither, or something like that. Like as if there's some kind of effort being placed towards awareness. And maintaining some kind of continuity. But then at the same time they're being at the same time that just happening, and like just kind of like allowance for that, for whatever's happening here to happen. Like with the things that I say, like simultaneously being like, yeah, it's me here saying them, and then also the things are just being said, also just witnessing them being said. I'm starting to feel increasingly cold. And so I'm glad that I brought this thermos of tea. I'm awkwardly balancing the umbrella on my shoulder while I pour tea. I'm going to finish it and then start walking fast, relatively fast. So within the scope of these 4 hours, at times what I'm talking about is going towards talking about just practical considerations of my immediate situation. You know, talking about being cold and like doing things to warm up. Which, you know, could be seen as something totally different than, I don't know, what I've been talking about that could be considered as like more universally universal and profound aspects of the human experience that I want to, like, you know, help awaken in you. But also, you know, everybody can relate to feeling cold. But then, you know, this makes me question, like, is there actually an impetus for us to relate? Like, why is that important? Merely the fact that we are both humans should be enough, right? Should be plenty. It is plenty, you know? And that's why, like, I still don't feel, I don't feel any kind of, like, urgent pressure to, like, to relate to you, to make you like me, you know? It's not that I want you to like me, it's that You know, more true than that would be that I want you to experience like well-being and a sense of personal autonomy and feeling that you are the foremost authority on your reality. You're the best person to know, I think, what you need to do in the immediate sense. And that's not to say that's not necessarily to say that you couldn't benefit from help from another person. Of course, all of us probably could. But even that has to initiate with you. So like I guess what I'm saying is that even if you do need help in some area of your life, you're the best person to know that you need help, I think. Well, I mean, this is irrelevant to say. This is totally irrelevant to say. It feels like all I'm kind of saying right now is like everything that I'm saying right now is just kind of like orbiting around the central truth that what we all have is our subjectivity. And that's the sort of thing that doesn't seem like it should need to be said. And furthermore, I can't say that saying that has any implications per se. You know, here I'm having this experience right now of like I guess it's the sort of a very mild form of the sort of experience of emptiness that I alluded to at the beginning of the video. But I feel okay with that. That is, you know, starting to hear myself talk and start to feel the pointlessness of what I'm saying. But feeling more or less accepting of that. As one component of a totality. And starting to think about like my physical conditions here, like, could be starting to impinge on the freedom of my mind, which is another thing that I kind of alluded to earlier in this video before it started to happen. And in other words, I'm just feeling cold, you know, And it's like harder to like think about well, for one, it's maybe like harder to concentrate on anything, harder to maintain continuity of thought. So maybe you're starting to notice that. And I think something that goes along with that is that it's you know, it's harder to like maintain some kind of like awareness of you know, my connection with all of reality, or whatever the hell I was talking about an hour ago. I was like, you know, it's like my mind is a little bit more in the default mode now. But it's interesting that I can talk about it as such and not really feel distressed, you know, not feel like disappointed that I'm not experiencing anything that I would call transcendent right now. I don't feel disappointed that like it's that I can't now like completely like I'm not currently experiencing a dissolution of self or you know, non-dual awareness exactly in this present moment. Or am I? You know, it's hard to. It's kind of hard to say. It's like if I'm telling you that I am experiencing default mode. That is, I feel identified with my body. I feel identified more or less with my thoughts. But then, you know, as I say that, like merely being aware of that keeps reminding me of this other truth, and keeps me connected to it in a way. Like, and so like that larger awareness is not exactly gone. And also, it's like it's as if I perfectly understand the importance of this default mode. It's, you know, my sensory experience is of being cold. And that activates my default mode, which pushes me to do things to stay warm, to start walking again, to walk at a slightly more brisk rate, and to walk towards my home, to maintain the integrity of this body. to maintain, you know, and that's in service of maintaining the human experience. Because apparently I value this experience of being a human, and being this particular human, having this particular body and mind in my experience is valuable enough to keep it going, to walk towards a warm place where I can eat food. Thinking about the future. Desiring to maintain the conditions under which this feeling, these experiences of connection and dissolution and freedom can occur. You know, it's like the differentiation is needed for the integration. And it's just this communication with you that really helps me to kind of transcend some of the biggest sort of problems of human life. And the big one that I'm thinking of is mortality. The fact that this individual body and brain will eventually deteriorate and decay and become indistinguishable from the dirt in the ground is not ultimately a problem. It's really not a problem for the higher thing that I feel connected with most of the time that I make these videos. That when I'm occupying this experience of communicating with you, it's like the most important part of me feels in a sort of communion with you. Feels actually in a kind of connection with maybe what I view as the most important part of you. The most important part of us is not separate. The most fundamental parts of you and I, of us, are not separated by things like our our bodies and our identities. They're not limited by our individual lifespans. The most important part of us is something that becomes actuated